Yo, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere in between and answer them here in video format. A lot of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. This first question is going to be from Logan, who says, with the Browns, with Clowney testing free agency, who is your favorite free agent or draft alternative at defensive? And also, do you think it would be worth it to bring back Olivier Vernon as a depth rotational piece on a vet minimum contract since he's trying to come back with his Achilles? Yeah, especially since you don't got Tack McKinley coming back, right? Because of the whole Achilles situation with Tack, you don't have him coming back. Sure, yeah, why not bring in Vernon? As long as he's not the main guy opposite of Miles, I think you can live with that. Now, as far as replacing Clowney, I got to look at the list again, but there are a number of older veteran defensive ends who could become available. And again, the thing with Clowney was never, in my opinion at least, I didn't think that the Browns bringing back Clowney would be a day one of free agency thing. This is going to be a thing where Clowney's going to have to, like you said, test the market, and we're going to see what the market is for Clowney, right? Is it where he thinks it should be because he's been wrong on the valuation for a couple of years now, or is it lesser? And the reasons it could be lesser is because he's starting to get into 30. He is a guy with an injury history, right, who just had a clean year but still with a massive injury history. And, there are just things in the way of him getting the money that he probably should get because of his play on the field that are going to slow teams down. And then once that washes out, right, if he doesn't get the deal that he thinks he's going to get, and from what it sounds like, from what people are reporting, it seems like Clowney feels like he is going to be able to get the deal that he wants. So if that's the case, he's probably gone. But if he doesn't get that deal, then that's when the Browns can swoop back in there and grab him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Clowney. Again, I think a lot of the free agency decisions aren't going to be day one, aren't going to be day two. I would be surprised, but I've been surprised before. I think we're going to have a lot of guys on this roster who are probably going to be one-year deals and that are probably going to be short-term fixes to some issues, mainly at wide receiver, maybe at edge depth, and maybe at tackle depth. Defensive tackle depth is what I mean, but not necessarily a lot of long-term deals like the Browns doled out the last couple of years. So we'll see. We'll see. That's just my feeling on that, and that comes with no reporting behind it. It's just how I feel about where this team is at with the roster. All right, next question comes from Pee Wee, who says, with Seattle seemingly being in full rebuild, do you go after Tyler Lockett? I know he is 30 years old, but his salary this season is manageable, but it does increase substantially over the next 3 seasons. 3 seasons. I don't think the Browns are, one, going to trade an asset for a wide receiver when there are plenty that you can get in free agency and plenty that you can get in the draft with just your own assets. 2, 3 seasons. The Browns are not committing to anybody, especially a wide receiver right now, for 3 more years when, again, they're not even working on an extension for Baker Mayfield. So as of right now, the Browns have a quarterback for 1 year. We don't know who's the quarterback going to be next year, right? Like, we might know by the end of the year. We might not know, but we have no guarantee, no idea who the quarterback's going to be next season because, again, Baker's deal is up after this year. It's very rare that a team, and only a team that does not feel like they have anybody who could be like when you out here starting like Andy Dalton and those kind of quarterbacks, right? When you have like the goof troop out here and we're throwing out retread after retread and it's no real starting quarterback. Yeah, you would sign a wide receiver to a 3-year deal because it doesn't matter. The quarterback position is not going to be stable regardless. But when you are at this tipping point with your quarterback, right, who's been the starter for the last 4 seasons in Baker Mayfield, the Mavs kind of different on that one. I don't think they commit to anybody that they have to commit to, especially if the salary increases over the next 3 seasons for long term. I think they go short term, quick in and out, right? If this is a disaster with Baker Mayfield this year, they can dump Baker, they can get rid of the wide receivers that they brought, and they can just start fresh on offense. That's the plan, right? If it goes bad, you can just dump it, get rid of it. If it goes good, okay, you got something to build around, right? But you don't want to franchise tag that one. You're probably going to be in that situation again where you're a 1-year deal, right? It's going to be, if you're one of the people who want Baker Mayfield to get a long-term deal, you're going to wait 2 seasons at least for that to happen, right? The Browns are going to wait till he puts 2 back together. They need 2 good seasons back together, right? Because we have been in this up and down pattern with him. So he needs the 2 seasons back together. And when it comes to a wide receiver for a long-term deal, when you have a quarterback situation that you don't really trust and it's going to take 2 years to really figure out, well, not 2 years. If it does work out, it's still going to take you another season to really commit to it long-term. Then you're going to be in the situation the Browns are where, hey, we're not going to go long-term. So I think the next couple of years, don't expect any long-term deals at wide receiver. Maybe they draft a young guy in the first 2 rounds. Even that, I think is a little bit more questionable, right? If you want to get pieces to build around the defense, Myles Garrett going to be there for the next 5 years. If you want to get pieces to build around the offense, very little certainty on who's still going to be here in 5 years, right? The Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, they're running back, so they could fizzle out like in 2 years. Like, it's not unheard of for a running back to fizzle out that fast after the rookie deal. The offensive line is good, but we got a couple of old guys on there, J.C. Treader and Joe Bitonio, so not as certain there. So again, if you're going to put in long-term deal money, long-term assets into any side of the ball, I think the smarter play is probably on the defense, because you know what you're building around on that defensive side of the ball for the next 5 years. You have no idea on the offensive side of the ball, unfortunately. The next question comes from Jay. Jay says, in some of your recent videos, you've been hitting that the Browns might play a more safe offensive scheme next year because of how they have a great defense. What does that scheme look like? And can a coach call a game like that? And can Baker handle a scaled-down offense? It's going to look like they're going to run the ball a lot, right? It's not really going to be that different than what the Browns have done the last 2 years, right? Which is a lot of play action, a lot of safe throws, and a lot of running the ball, right? I think the only thing that's going to change, and the only thing that should change this year, is last year I was fairly adamant, and I still defend the position that I had last year, that it made no sense to bench Baker Mayfield at any point during the 2021 season, just because you had Case Keenum behind him, right? It wasn't as much as an endorsement of Baker Mayfield as it was an indictment on the backup situation. I did not trust Case Keenum more. Well, I don't know if I want to say trust. I did not think that the offense would get anything fixed by Case Keenum being out there, that Baker Mayfield wasn't doing the same thing, right? And that has to change, right? Whether if it's going to be Case Keenum, sure, I would not be a fan of that, but you got to get somebody in there that, hey, if the things go off the rails with Baker, you got to get him out of there, right? Because you got to at least be serviceable on the offensive side of the ball. So the leash is going to be a little bit shorter on him. That's probably going to be a part of it. The other part of it's going to be low-risk football, right? Run the ball a lot, move the ball in chunks, 10-yard chunks, throw to tight ends. Like, it's going to be the same offense it's always been. Maybe less shots, less trick plays, and just more straight-up football, and just try to bruise and pound teams. And that's how they won in 2020, and that's probably, if they win in 2022, that's how they're going to have to win there. So it's not that different than what they've been doing. It's actually, they play a very complementable scheme to a good defense. Just look at the teams that are successful with it, right? The San Francisco 49ers come to mind. Great defense, low-risk offense. That's probably what the Browns going to run, right? They need to find somebody who could be that option, right? That George Kittle-like option to get there. I don't know if they have that on the roster right now. That's probably what they need to obtain in the draft. But other than that, you got enough there with your running backs so where you can live if your defense is going to be great and your quarterback ain't going to be awful, right? You still need decent quarterback play. You can't have awful quarterback play. Last year, the quarterback play was awful for a myriad of reasons. Some that are the players' fault, some that aren't, but a lot of them that were the players' fault. So you can't be that awful again. The next question comes from William Zinn, who says, if we go all out on defense like you suggested, really put a defense together similar to the Baltimore Ravens with Ray Lewis, Woodson. Hey, man, you're not about to leave Ed Reed out. We're not about to leave Ed Reed out of that conversation with the Ravens, man. Come on, give Ed Reed his respect. Hall of Famer. Can that type of team get to a Super Bowl with high-powered offenses and QBs in the AFC currently? It's going to be a much different struggle, right? When the Baltimore Ravens did that, What? Who were really the elite quarterbacks in 2000, right? Because Tom Brady hadn't emerged yet. There was no Peyton Manning. It was really like the old guard. Brett Favre was in the AFC, NFC. There really wasn't that many good quarterbacks, right? You talking about the late 90s period. That's where Cordell Stewart got to an AFC championship game with the Steelers. Much different era, right? And I think that happens when we have these offhand conversations on Twitter about, oh, is Baker good enough to win a Super Bowl? Oh, well, this mediocre quarterback got to the Super Bowl. Yes, Trent Dilfer got to the Super Bowl, but Trent Dilfer got to a Super Bowl in the AFC that, like, I'm pretty sure the best quarterback in the AFC at that time, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the best three quarterbacks in the AFC at that time, they might not even be in the top 5 of the AFC right now, right? Like, maybe, what was it? Tom really wasn't, Tom wasn't even in the league yet. So it's just, it's a different ball game than it was there. So you're gonna need to get something out the quarterback. The day of dragging Trent Dilfer to a Super Bowl, I think that's over with, right? They had they had an awful quarterback situation. They dragged that thing to a Super Bowl. I think that had special circumstances even for the time. There was especially bad quarterback play at that time. If you look at the other time where a mediocre quarterback, and I'm sorry that if this sounds mean, but mediocre is just mediocre, right? It gets a more negative rap than what that word actually means. But Nick Foles is a pretty mediocre quarterback. He won a Super Bowl, but again, took special circumstances for him to get here. He was in an especially weak NFC. He played Case Keenum in the championship game to get there, right? Like, it wasn't like there was a gauntlet of quarterbacks and teams and high-powered offenses that he had to go through. It takes special circumstances. The idea that you're going to get that in the AFC is slim to none. It can happen technically, but it's slim to none. So you can't get through the AFC if your quarterback isn't going to be a positive at the very least. And even if that's the case, your quarterback's going to have to, I don't know if he's got to be a guy, right? I don't know if he's got to be top 10, but he's got to be around it, right? Or else I don't really think you have a shot in the AFC. So it's going to be tough. There are no comparisons for any scenario or situation like this in history because no conference has been this loaded at quarterback ever since the quarterback position got as important as it is now. This has never happened before. So we can't really act like this is something that's happened before and go on precedent. There's no precedent of it. This is an unprecedented era that we live in when it comes to quarterback play. So, hey, man, it's tough. It's going to be tough. Maybe the Browns can get it done with a great defense, but they got to be one of the greatest defense. If the Browns do get to the Super Bowl and let's say Baker gives you a pretty average year at quarterback, right? Let's say he's like maybe 5 touchdowns over positive, 3,000 yards and just not like great numbers, then that would be grounds to call them the greatest defense on earth that's ever played. Because in this era, to get to the Super Bowl with just a defensive effort would take an incredible amount of defense, an incredible amount of turnovers, an incredible amount of point production that no defense in the modern era has ever even come close to. So that's what the situation is. Ultimately, you're going to need something out the quarterback position. And you're going to need it to be pretty damn good at the end of the day. It's just that's where the bar is in the AFC. The next question comes from Woohoo, says, since the Bengals kicker Evan McPherson is single-handedly kicked. Okay, let's stop with this. Single-handedly kicked the Bengals into the Super Bowl. Single-handedly. This is a troll, right? Do you think it's smart for the Bengals to draft him? In contrast, the Browns were kept out the playoffs by a Okay, this is I got to come back at you, man. First of all, the Bengals were not kicked into the Super Bowl by just Evan McPherson. Did he play his part? Absolutely. He played his part. But you know who else played their part? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. You telling me a Bengals team would just, because how that is worded, and this is how people do word stuff on Twitter sometimes. This is why I clap back at kicker Twitter all the time, because they word things like this and it bugs me. But Evan McPherson did not kick the Bengals into the Super Bowl. If the Bengals did not have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they ain't going to the Super Bowl even if they got Evan McPherson. That's just the truth. Now, as far as that Browns thing goes, the Browns were kept out the playoffs by a dismal kicker. That's revisionist history. Come on, man. Let's be real about it. The Browns were kept out the playoffs because they got nothing out the quarterback position for the last 5 weeks of the season. Well, up until that last game where Case Keenum played, but they got nothing out the quarterback position. Negative. Terrible offense. That's what kept the Browns out the playoffs. If a kicker missed a kick, cool, whatever. But let's be real here. The kicker wasn't the main reason the team stunk. It was the offense. The offense stunk terribly. Like, let's not revisionize stuff. This is why when I say that people put too much of an emphasis on kicker is when people say stuff like this. Evan McPherson did not kick the Bengals into the Super Bowl. He played his part. He made them kicks. Absolutely. Now, as far as were they right to draft him, they were lucky. It usually does not work out when you draft the kicker. That's what the math is. The math is that it usually doesn't work out. It's him and Mason Crosby's the last guy that hit on the same team that drafted him. Everybody else, bust, or third or second team that they've gotten onto or undrafted free agent. So the numbers don't bear out that drafting a kicker is going to work out. It just doesn't. But they got lucky. They drafted the right dude. Hey, good on them, right? They've had a couple of misses in their history, right? Mike Nugent, Fat Randy. They drafted another kicker that they let cut in camp, and then they ended up being pretty good. They've had a couple of misses. They got that one right. But let's not – look, kickers are important because they have to make kicks and they have to do their job. But let's not act like a kicker doing their job is carrying the offense. That is ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Woohoo. I hope you are still a fan of this show after that, but I need you to understand how you worded that was flat out ridiculous. Don't ever word nothing like that again. Be more careful because you just said a kicker. Oh my goodness. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. I understand if you got an appreciation for the position. I'm not against that, but let's not act like the Bengals only got to the Super Bowl because of Evan McPherson. Did he make some kicks? Yes. But you know who scored the rest of them points? The offense. You know why they got there? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. You know what I mean? Like the defense. It's not just about the kicker. That's ridiculous. All right, man. Let's go to Rendall, who says, looks like a bigger cap savings if Hooper is let go after June 1st. Could he be traded as well? And do we hope that we can ditch Hooper and get his targets to Njoku? Hey, man, the reports are that they plan on keeping him. I don't know what to do with that, right? There's no reason to lie about that, right? If that's out, that's out. Like, I think they're keeping him. Like, that's what I've heard. If that changes, cool. But even if they wanted to cut him at the June 1st, they didn't have to say nothing, right? Like, nothing had to come out. So the fact that something came out that they want to keep Hooper, they told his agents and his people that they're keeping him. And that's usually how Andrew Berry and them roll, right? They don't really lie like that to at least representation, right? They might be vague about certain things, but they usually don't say something to an agent and then take it back. That's when that stuff comes out, right? When it's like, hey, Austin Hooper is expected to come back to this team. That means that they talk to their agent and they have an understanding. Whether that holds, we'll see. But as of right now, they're bringing him back, man. All right, the next question comes from what we got here. Okay, we got Mike. Mike, who says 2 questions. Thoughts on Mary Kay saying that the Browns are interested in Derek Carr. Also, is it just me or does it feel like Andrew Berry is in a mini rebuild? A little bit. I mean, every offseason is a mini rebuild. As far as the Derek Carr stuff, it makes sense, right? Like, you don't have a sure thing at quarterback right now. Like, as long as we can live in that reality, you don't have to think Baker is terrible. You don't have to think Baker is great. But you do have to understand that the Browns quarterback situation is not a guaranteed thing right now. Like, nobody in the league is like, man, I got to play Baker Mayfield. That's just the reality of it right now. So when you're in that situation, you're always looking for an upgrade. And yeah, if Derek Carr can be had, it will be had. But I don't know if they're trying to give up Derek Carr. That would take somebody having a really high opinion. Like, if you want to trade Baker Mayfield, or not trade, if you want to trade for Derek Carr, you would have to hope that Josh McDaniels has a high opinion on Baker Mayfield, because getting Derek Carr from a team that's not necessarily rebuilding would require that team really like the guy that they're getting in return. And I don't know if that's the case, right? I know he's liked Baker in the past, but I don't know where that love is right now. The next question comes from Jerome, who says, do you feel discouraged by all these pre-free agency moves? I'm patient, but the AFC is getting more loaded by the day. Has there ever been a team traded to a new conference? Oh, man, it's going to be tough. The AFC is going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. Everybody good's coming here. Everybody's good. It's like the Western Conference in the early 2000s. It's ridiculous. All right, the next question comes from CJ, who says, what are you seeing in Jordan Davis that I'm not? Despite his size and athleticism, he only got 55% of the snaps at Georgia. Even with his production wasn't great. Even if he's there at 13, it seems like a reach. Travis Jones from UConn was more productive with less around. Well, CJ, I'm going to answer that question in a couple of steps here, right? One, first things first, when it comes to anybody in that box, right, that's front seven area, the stats, the production means very little, right? That's a position where you got to see it, right? Like, how many times have we seen a trash Brown player like lead the team in tackles or lead the league in tackles? Just because somebody's got to make those tackles, right? The stats that you accumulate in the front seven are almost a coincidence, right? It's more or less a consequence of everybody doing their job, right? The reason Myles Garrett had a ton of sacks, everybody did their job. It's not necessarily a show of force. There are some plays that you can get that are just a show of force. But again, the production alone doesn't really tell the whole story, especially in the box. The second thing I want to address, 55% of his snaps. CJ, what I need you to understand, what I need people who are evaluating Jordan Davis to understand is that Georgia has like more first-round picks on their defensive line, starting and backing up, than most NFL teams do. Honestly, than all of the NFL teams do, right? Not a lot of teams have 4 first-round picks on their defensive line. That's what Georgia has. Georgia got like 6 of them. So yes, was Jordan Davis subbing out, only playing 55% of his snaps? Yeah, because they have another guy who's probably going to go 13th overall next year to come in and replace him. When you have that kind of depth, you're just not going to play as much, even when you're a tremendous individual player. I promise you, if Jordan Davis played at UConn, he would have all the stats and stuff that you wanted because he's going to be the only guy there worth a damn at UConn. It's easier to accumulate stats when you're the only guy that's NFL level on a defensive line because all the plays come to you, right? And that's the thing with Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis's job, since he wasn't the only guy at Georgia, wasn't necessarily to make all the plays like Travis Jones's job was. It was to get guys in position to make plays. So his production is not going to be great. He's not going to be on the field all the time. But if you watch the tape, you know what Jordan Davis is, right? He's a really, really good athlete. He's really physical. He's really strong, and he's really long. Like, he's a great defensive tackle prospect, and he's a freak athlete at his size. So that, I hope, answers and clears up some of the questions there. But it's all about the process of how you evaluate these guys. And when it comes to tackle, you can't go strictly off of production because, again, a lot of production on the defensive line can be about a consequence of a greater action more so than it is about the individual effort, right? It's not like, well, it's kind of like rushing yards, but it's not like anything else in there, right? Especially in that box area. Don't get caught up on the production because, again, yes, Travis Jones is going to have more productive stats than Jordan Davis because there's only one Travis Jones at UConn. There's like 4 Jordan Davises right now at Georgia because they got one of the best defensive recruiting classes of all time. So it's a different situation. Just a different situation. Think of it as if Jordan Davis was like the best wide receiver in like a 5 wide receiver tandem, right? Like all of a sudden then the production's going to go down. Yeah, because there's more options and guys to throw it to. It's kind of the same thing at the tackle position. So again, I wouldn't be discouraged by any of his production because when you watch him on tape, the man is phenomenal. The only issue people can have with Jordan Davis is his production because the tape don't lie. And there's reasons why that production wasn't good, and it ain't really his fault, right? That's my thoughts on Jordan Davis. Y'all know I like Jordan Davis. But again, thank you guys for asking these questions. Y'all have a great day. Have a good